Hi guys, and welcome back to the new episode of the Cities Skylines series Vermont. Today we are going across the street from the opera, and the first thing you are seeing and watching me build now is this high school. Here first I had to make some more space, because before I had some smaller building, and in the meantime I lost the asset and I had to find a new one. And then I used some brush to fill in the space with pavement. Of course I had to move this hedge a little bit so it's not in the way. Then I jumped in front of the high school, where I used this fence and I sunk into the ground. The way I wanted to make it's to be a very short fence that divides the grass from the road. Next thing you saw me was adding some roads for further development, and then I updated it with the same trees so it looks uniformed all the way through the boulevard. Of course, the high school needs some parking space, and I placed some next to it, here as you see on the screen. And I hate when the parking space is just parking with nothing green in them, so I always use these planters and I put trees inside. This time I also use this small plant, it's hosta plants. I really like them and they look really nice here. And I also use this city road tree, that's like young trees that are not too big and not too small, and I think they look nice here. This brush tool you see me use now is quite a good asset. It makes pavement making quite nice and easy because it has final shape. It not always works perfectly, but it's better than the paintbrush tool that usually I used before. Because here I have two bigger roads connecting to each other, I wanted to have more space for pedestrians, so I used this pedestrian path to make it wider. Of course I had to put some curbs and some hedges, because I wanted to fence this green area where I'm going to plant trees and bushes later. And because the hedge is network, I used Move It Mod to make it into the final shape. And then I continued with this green area here, where I got the idea that I could make a little cafe with a restaurant. And then I, of course, fenced it with some planters and plopped a lot of bushes and trees in that area to make it nicer. I used this cluster of bushes and several single bushes, and of course my favorite set of trees, these pines that have three different sizes that are really nice, and I really like to use them in my city. And then as you see here, I started with putting some tables, and of course then I added some umbrellas to shield the guests from the sun. Because I like to watch my city sometimes at night, I also placed some light posts so I can have light here, because otherwise it would be completely in the dark. And now you can see me struggle with this intersection. I tried to make it, I don't know, different than other intersections I have in my city. And of course I used some hedges that I used Move It Mod to adjust to the curvature of this sidewalk. And of course we placed some more trees and bushes and some flowers to make this space not just green, but to have it a little bit of color as well. Then now we are here at this gas station that I had from almost the beginning of my city. And then finally came the time to finish this portion. So I also added this pedestrian path, because I plan to make a block of buildings at this spot and this triangle. Because I have this big empty space behind the gas station, I decided to put this shop building and I turned it into a procedural object because it doesn't have a proper road connection. And after that I tried to make this space in front for the carts for the people that they can use to go into the shop. Of course, I used this planter and this cart asset. I have, I don't know when I subscribe to it, but it looks quite nice with when you place them like that. And then for the first time, I think, in my city, I decided to use this dirt and damaged decals because I thought that maybe this gas station could actually look a little bit dirtier and older than the rest of the city. Now you can see me place and delete some lines with intersection marking tool, and even when intersections are so simple like this one, I sometimes struggle to get a clear idea what I want to do. After that I continued with this empty lot that's almost next to the high school and across the parking lot, and I start placing buildings all around it. And then I jumped to the end where I just finished with some brush and plopping some trees in the middle. And here we have a small patch of grass that in the end I decided to divide into two smaller planting areas and finished filming for that day and went to try and test something in the PO. I wanted to make some signs, and of course my game crashed, so that's why you can see game over. I had to do this part that you saw me build. I had to do it from the scratch and from the beginning. And after I did that, in the meantime, while I was building, not everything ended up looking the same. I made some small changes, and the cart area is actually much nicer now. You will see that later in the cinematics. And then in the back, of course, of this shop, I also wanted to have a cafe. So I made this terrace and put some plants and trees to make, of course, nicer. And by the use of PO, I made this coffee shop sign much bigger, and I used this pole to make this sign like a tall and bigger sign from a cafe. It's really nice, and I like how it turned out in the end. I think that PO is quite good for stuff like this. Now I went to build this building area that I was talking earlier about, and I wanted to fill this triangle with some buildings, and then I decided to use these French buildings so it would look like it's one building and not multiple buildings. Then I also placed some trees in the middle, and I used these palm trees that are quite tall and stick out of the building, and I think that it looks nice like that. And then in this other side that is closer to this parking lot that I had from before, I put some small shops, clip them into the building, so this area would look like it's a small shopping area for this side of the city. One of them is also a pizzeria, so I also put these tables in front so it would have a nice terrace so that people could sit outside and not only inside. And because for my city it's quite important that people use bikes, I placed these bike racks that have planters on each side, and I filled them of course with hostas because those plants really fit nicely inside. Next, on the other side of this French building, I placed these two shops that are actually grocery stores to make it bigger shop and so that it would serve more people at this area. And of course I had to redo these brushes because each time when you plop some building or you do some road change, they always disappear no matter if you have the anarchy mode on. And here with this triangle I struggled a lot, and then in the end I plopped this buildings in this square shape, even though it's not the perfect shape for this lot, but it looks quite okay in the end. And here we have some intersection marking tool work. This was quite a tedious intersection because it had a lot of rules on the lines. Now we are already on the next one that's also quite tedious, and I think that I will have to practice a little bit more, because those intersections are quite horrible sometimes when you have to do a lot of lines and then it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. And then of course putting rules on them where to put dots, lines, full line, it gets very stressful. Here I had to redo this intersection because I had to move this node a little bit to the different position so I can connect and make a nicer space for buildings. And here you can see I jumped all the way to the almost finish of placing buildings into that spot. I used some PO to make this building shorter to fit more nicely in this corner. Then in the cinematics you will see that actually this corner will look much different because off camera I made it different. Of course we have more intersections. After I finished that intersection off camera, I decided to make this square space into a smaller block, not to fill the whole place with buildings. I wanted to have a little square in front of it, that you will see me put some stuff a little bit later. Then again I had some more intersections that I had to detail. And now we are in that little square in front where I put this cafeteria, little restaurant bistro, and I put some terraces and kiosks with planters and trees, and of course some square fountains that are a little bit more modern than usual fountains I place in my city. As usual, I use these bike racks. I think they look really nice and fit into most spaces you can build. Then now you see me again use this fence that I stretched and put all along these green grass areas. And then of course now we are at the museum. That is actually the focal point of this episode. It took some time to come here, but now we are here. Of course, I wanted to detail it around with something a bit more modern, so I used these triangle-shaped pergolas that are actually props, turn them into POs, and then use it to scale them into different sizes, so I can make some modern installation right next to this cafe. As usual, I used some tables to make a terrace of this cafe bigger, and then in the end I decided to use these pergolas shapes as a modern pergola above these tables. And in the end it looks quite nice because this combination of black and white, it makes it look really modern and very interesting. After that, I also wanted to make this space look different than the rest of the city, so I used decals of these tiles and this wavy pattern cobblestones. I think you will recognize them, they are quite famous. but they really look nice because they are a combination of modern tiles and this more I don't know, rustical wavy cobblestone. After that, I realized that this space is quite big, so I had to fill it with something. I tried it on camera, but it didn't end up well, and I made it in the end off camera. And as you see, it's a combination of triangle shapes, planters, these pergolas that I used here on the cafe. And of course I had to put some plants because like this it looked quite empty. I used these small and medium-sized date plants. And after that I was testing some lights off camera. I didn't like how it all looked, so I cut that portion out of the video. And after that I went in front of this let's say on the other side of the museum, where I put this big fountain, some planters that are made from wood, and in the middle they have planting areas. Then I used the invisible path to make people walk on this square, and use the same trees from the other side also here in this smaller and like taller size. To make it nicer and more filled in the middle, I used also some of these ferns. And to mimic the other side, I used the same shapes of these pergolas, of course in different sizes and also in black and white color. Here we jump where I already defined the shapes I wanted to use, and I wanted to have 3 clusters of those pergolas, and you can see a little animation of that area. And I think at this point I maybe should have stopped filming and finish this episode, but I couldn't let those smaller parts be empty. And then I continued building and filming. So this is of course a residential block with some backyard where I later placed some trees and some planters, and I made a small seating area that's covered with a small tent so that people can even use it in rain. And to fill this space, I copied these planters with trees and kiosk from next to the theater from the opera. I really like this construct I made, and it fits quite well in many places, as you can see it here. And then I of course placed some shops on the other side that I copied into the buildings and clipped them inside to make some shopping areas as well on this road. Here also you can see that I changed the road for this tram road, and later on, because when I tested it with the trams, it didn't make nice stops, so I then had to change it again, even after I made all of those complicated intersections. And now we are here. I placed this church. It's St. Mark's church from Zagreb. It's quite famous and a very nice church. Whoever have the opportunity to visit Zagreb, I highly recommend you go there because the roof is quite nice and detailed, and it has colored tiles that form the coat of arms of city of Zagreb and the triune of Croatia, Slavonia and Dalmatia. And because this area is a bit bigger than a standard city block, I decided to put this little cemetery next to the church. I placed some gravestones and some mausoleums, and I also used some statues that in the end I turned into the custom graves that you will see better in the cinematics, because I had to cut this portion of the video because I didn't film it very nice. So it doesn't look as good as I wanted it to look. Then I placed some trees to fill the space so it doesn't look empty and barren. And then in the end, of course, I had to put some trees in front of the church. I used these flowering trees to break up the greenery. At this point, I mostly filmed just a portion of this residential block, and then I stopped filming because my game was crashing. And in the end, I made a lot of changes to the roads and other stuff. So in the cinematics, you will see better what ended up being built and how I detailed it. So for now, I want to thank you. Stay safe, and if you like what you've seen, you can leave a like and of course subscribe to see more. Have a nice day and goodbye.